everybody. We have yet another very special guest for you this week. Everybody, welcome to the show, the great and powerful Justin Gray.
Neither of those things. Hello.
Yeah. I was going to say like Gunslinger Justin Gray or something like, but yeah, I guess that works too, right?
Welcome to the show. Live up to all of this now.
I was hoping you'd show up with like at least like a cowboy hat on or something, but no. Maybe
I know, right?
Yeah. But welcome, and it's your first time on the show, so you probably have done this quite a bit. But we'd like to hear your origin story before we talk comics with you. So, how did it happen for you, and were you always a comics fan? Let's start there, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly who put the first comic in my hand or how it ended up there, and I think it was probably Hot Stuff and Casper leading up to Spider-Man at some point somehow. And then I became enamored with Spider-Man and everything just sort of extrapolated from there. I went through probably all the stages that you go through.
Yep.
As a little kid reading comics, and I would read anything. And then I started getting a little more picky about things I liked that spoke to me. And I had that going for quite a while. And into middle school, I was trying to play superheroes with people that just didn't, they would humor me for like 5 minutes and then be like, this kid's a nerd, let's just pick on him. So then I went through that whole stage. And by the time I got to high school, I was hiding my comics from any potential girlfriends I had. I remember a girlfriend pulled open a drawer in my bedroom. She was like, what is this? And I was like, oh, no.
You found them. Oh, no.
My great shame.
Yeah.
Like, of all the things to be ashamed of in life.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
a teenage girl finding comics in your room. It's like probably not the problem anymore. I went to college and I kind of fell out of the comic book thing for a while, and then I got back into it after that. And I sort of harbored the idea in the back of my head that I wanted to write comics, and I wanted to do the cliche thing. I wanted to do my version of Spider-Man, my version of X-Men or whatever, Batman, Flash, and so on. And it wasn't happening. I was pitching and getting rejected like crazy, not just comics, but all kinds of things, literary magazines, poetry magazines, anyone that would read anything I wrote down. I would just get, rejection after. I would have like shoe boxes full of rejection letters from publishers, both big and small, or even just like people who use Xerox machines. And I would just burn the box and be like, okay, this is my New Year's resolution, is this year it's going to happen. And that went on for quite a while. And I finally decided, after living in New York and moving across country a couple times, I decided that I was going to just move back to the East Coast and make a serious go of it. And of course, I ended up working in restaurants and not getting anywhere near comics until the internet. And the internet came along, and I started reaching out to people, and I ended up talking to Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada during their event days, right when they took over Marvel Knights.
Wow.
And I kind of hounded them for a little bit, and I had still been working in restaurants, and I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant, but nobody likes to work 10 to 12-hour days. And so
for sure.
One weekend, I said I had enough, and I jumped in my truck, and I drove from New York to Chicago without a hotel room. I found a hotel, and I broke out what's called a phone book. I don't know if anybody knows what that is anymore.
It's an ancient relic of the past, but
yes.
Yep.
It was this huge tome of numbers, and I called every hotel around the convention center until I got plugged into Joe Quesada, and I said, "Hey, I'm here," and they said, "Well, just come out and hang out with us for the weekend." And then about a month and a half later, I was interning at Marvel Knights.
Wow!
At Marvel, at the rooftop where they were set up at the top of the building.
Wow, that is so. You just took a shot and you drove down.
I did. I had more balls than brains, I think, for most of that period. If it's okay for me to say that, I don't
know. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Just bomb you guys or whatever.
No, we're fine.
So that's what happened. I just said, I have this switch in my brain, which is I attribute to some of my success and some of my torture, is that I just say, the hell with it, I'm just going to do it. Whether I pass or fail is regardless. It's not as important as me just saying I'm going to do it and knowing that I did it.
Right.
So when you're at Marvel Knights, is this where you first start working with Jimmy?
This is where I was getting a lot of Ranch One and doing Xerox copies of comics and sort of helping Nancy Dekezian work on editorial with really no clue. I really just wanted to write comics. I didn't understand. I was very naive that it was a business. I thought I was going to walk in there and there was going to be a bullpen of all my heroes standing around joking and having a good time, and then kind of comics would just appear out of that.
Right.
And I very quickly learned it's a business, just like any other business. It's an office building with office workers, and I think it was like the first or second day that I was kind of wandering around starry-eyed, and I had gone out to get lunch for people, and it was McDonald's or something, and I was walking through the thing, and Chris Claremont went, "Oh, French fries," and just like grabbed the whole handful of my French fries and started eating them. And I was like, "All right, well,
okay, that just happened."
I'm not a germaphobe, but come on, man.
Yeah.
And I love Chris. That's like one of my favorite things. Like, I would never just grab someone's food, but I was like, all right, whatever. It's Chris Claremont.
Yeah, it's Chris.
Yeah.
Let him have him. That's amazing. And from that though, you've written so much stuff, and it ended up being more DC than Marvel, right?
Yeah, that's you never know where life is going to take you. It's strange, for sure.
So how did that transition happen? You just changed after a while, or?
Well, no, it was just events that took. I'm very much the kind of person that thinks that when you're presented with an opportunity, you have to take the opportunity, even though it may not make sense to you, or whatever it is may not be how you envision things. Because life for me has rarely gone as I envisioned it. I've made many plans and never seen those plans come to fruition, but seen parallel plans. Like, I grew up as a Marvel kid. I absolutely consumed everything Marvel. Not everything, but I had my little niche thing. I liked my Fantastic Four, my X-Men, Spider-Man, Daredevil. Then there's other things that I kind of liked later, or things that I appreciate in movie form that I wasn't really a big comic fan of. But I found out working in office is not my thing. I kind of thought it wasn't, because I had always worked like blue collar jobs and restaurant service industry jobs where like there's no place for you to hide. Like when you work on the line in a restaurant, you're doing 700 dinners a night. Like if you're the weakest link, everyone knows it.
Right.
But when you're in a corporate environment, there's this sort of like piranha tank of behaviors that my brain doesn't work that way. I'm like, if I see something, I say something, and most people don't want you to do that. So I ended up leaving Marvel and going back to restaurants. And I remember I was sitting in a Fridays one night having a meal with friends, and Jimmy called and he said, "Listen, I'm going to do this thing for Wildstorm. They want us to pitch a couple of things. Do you want to come and write this book with me?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Of course, obviously, whatever," because we had stayed in touch after I left. Right. And we had a solid friendship that had nothing to do with comics. I've never been the kind of person who like geeks out over stars or famous people or anything. Right. So I think there was an understanding that I really wanted to work, and I'm not really that interested in fame either. So it was kind of like, just give me the work and I'm happy. Right. And that's what happened. We did 21 Down for Wildstorm when they relaunched Gen 13 and a couple other books. And then we did The Resistance with them as well.
Yep.
One was 12 issues, one was 8 issues. And that was an interesting thing. I'd never done indie comics outside of like trying to get somebody to draw a comic.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it was interesting to go right from nothing to working at Wildstorm DC, and somewhere in there, mixed in there, I think the first thing I had done with Jimmy and done professionally was a book for Brian Pulido called Chastity Reimagined, and I just suddenly found myself working in comics, and it was an interesting transition period because I was still making all the dumb mistakes and saying the wrong things at social gatherings and wanting to talk about work when everybody else just wanted to drink and do whatever.
Right.
So
that takes time to learn all those things.
Yeah, if you're already socially awkward, it's not that easy to just like be suddenly thrust into this situation. I could have handled it better. But.
Yeah.
And was Jimmy somebody that you immediately connected with?
Yeah, I did. I connected with Jimmy and Joe, and then I stayed more like casually in touch with Joe, and more like more frequently in touch with Jimmy. Just calling it to BS about stuff or whatever, and so he just immediately said, "Do you want to try this?" And I think it was a testing process because it's not easy just to work with another person creatively. You can sometimes go really well, or sometimes it's just a bitch fest all the time. You're like at each other, and I'm not an argumentative person.
Yeah.
So regardless of how honest I am, I don't really want to fight with anybody about stuff. I can just move on from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want this to seem like I want to learn more about Jimmy through you, but when I think of Justin Gray, I think of Jimmy and Justin.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I was looking through
works.
your bibliography earlier, and it makes sense because a lot of what you guys did throughout the years was together. So very interested in that chemistry of two people doing something together for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, the industry is and it continues to be an interesting place. There was a lot of times people didn't want to take a chance on me solo. There's a lot of that sort. I mean, it's the entertainment industry, and people want bankable, reliability. They want, it's not necessarily reliability, but they want to know there's a certain measure of expectation. And I always felt like, because I like I said, I say things honestly, and sometimes people don't want to hear that. So if I have a problem with something, I say I have a problem with something, thinking that, okay, let's just address the problem. But then it becomes a convoluted thing where sometimes people's feelings get hurt, which is not my intention. My intention is to do the best job possible. And, if something doesn't make sense to me, I say, well, why doesn't, So I feel like maybe at some points I know that there was abrasion. People were misinterpreting the way that I was talking. And so at one point I confronted a situation where somebody was like, oh, well, you have this attitude. I was like, I really don't. Like, if somebody's telling you I have an attitude, I would love to talk to them, because I really don't take myself that seriously. I mean, I want to do a good job. I want that to be reflected in the work, but I'm not a prima donna, and I'm not a tyrant. And I mean, how can I be and work with someone else? And of course,
right, exactly. So I mean, you get your exposure to like Wildstorm within DC, and that you probably have some like constraints that you have to write in between for those stories, right? Like, there's things you can do, there's things you can't do, and then is that where, like, when does Jonah Hex come into play, where you take that over? You take that character over 70 issues, which was like a pretty big feat in itself, right? I mean, there's quite a bit of Jonah Hex. So, like, when did that come into play?
I think we were doing Hawkman, and we were trying to, you want to get on bigger books. You want, for a number of reasons, not just for your own creativity, but there's financial reasons and everything else. So we were always kind of like, how do we get on bigger books? And for whatever reason, we ended up being on sort of niche books or CPR books, or keep an IP alive books. But when Jimmy said, I think there was something where he was talking to Dan, and Jimmy said, well, I really would like to do Jonah Hex. And he came to me and said, they're going to let us pitch this. And I said, okay. I said, I love Westerns, but I love a specific kind of Western over other. I don't like odors. I don't like the sort of heavily drawn out morality play of it. I like spaghetti Westerns. I like European spaghetti Westerns, and Americans in those movies as well. So the idea was to look at Jonah Hex as a character and try some different things creatively. I think there was a lot of narration that we were doing between 21 Down and Hawkman, and there was a lot of internal monologue, and I felt kind of stifled by that. So the idea that we were playing around with was that you don't know what's going on in his head. You only see what he does, and then you see how other people react to him. So creatively, that was interesting. And then we were still in that long 6-issue arc thing, and Stephen Wacker, the editor at the time, suggested that no, let's do one and dones. Let's go old school. Let's do 1-issue, 2-issue things. And I kind of had a panic attack, because I was like, wait, you've been grooming me on this thing. And before this, I was trying to write novels. And now all of a sudden you're like, I have 22, 24 pages to tell a complete story. Right. And every month. And, but within the scripting of the first issue, for me, I was like, why have I been doing it the other way? It's just, there's a lot of fat on the animal when you do it like that. And I just felt like this was like, we have no choice but to make this work. This was probably going to be canceled. It's a cowboy book. They're doing all this stuff, revamping their entire superhero universe. Which we thought it was going to be a detriment, and it actually turned out to be a positive because nobody really cared what we were doing. Right. So we were left alone, and editors were just kind of like, what are we going to do? And when you do one and dones or two and dones, you can write 6 artists worth of material. So that's how that started happening. All of a sudden we were like, well, we have more scripts than we have artists working. And we started just getting artists. And we were saying, Jimmy and I would get on the phone and be like, who do you want to work with? And be like, this guy. Okay, well, let's see if we can get this person to work on it. And we'd reach out and they'd be like, oh, they're a huge Jonah Hex fan, or, oh, they want to do Westerns, or, oh, they don't want to do it because they won't draw horses. And which is,
that's awesome.
It's a pretty prevalent thing, not wanting to draw horses.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, because like a horse doesn't usually show up in a superhero book that often. So.
No.
So when they do that big revamp and they do New 52, and you get the word like, we're doing Jonah still, but we're going to call it All-Star Western. And, well, first, is it your guys' idea to be like, let's tie a little bit more in with the DC universe, or was that kind of upper management saying, hey, put them in Gotham?
Let's see. Well, after we did the first run, I was kind of like, I was always anticipating the day when it ended.
Yeah.
We got through one year and I was like, well, there's another year and then there's another year. But all the time in the back of my head was like, when is the shoe going to drop? Mm-hmm. So we definitely had a very firm understanding of where we wanted to walk off the stage with that book. And then, yes, DC said they want to do All-Star. They're going to keep doing Jonah Hex, but it's going to be All-Star Western. And my immediate reaction was, I don't want to do that. And they said, it can be set in Gotham in the same time zone. And I'm like, yeah, that appeals to me. I like that. But I'm torn because this was a thing and it was really special to me. Right. And just the fact that we got to work with all these artists and we had so much freedom, we went through so many editors because editors would love to work on the book because they didn't have to do anything. We were,
right.
We were saying we wanted to work with this person, we wanted to work with this colorist, and we had the same colorist and letter through huge chunks of the book as we went through it. And so by the time we finished with the Jeff Lemire issue, and they said that, I was kind of really torn about it. Because one thing, it's a job too. You want the work. I mean, you have a job. It was like, okay, so what can we do? And then it was coming up against what we couldn't do more than what we could do. So the confines were, it was now a buddy comic. It was now Amadeus Arkham and Jonah Hex, who were polar opposites, and they would have to deal with things that were happening in Gotham, and it couldn't be too much like The Alienist, and it couldn't be too much of like a Batman thing. And we had hoped at certain times to do things that were at a larger scale in the Western elements of it. Like I was dying the whole time to do an Amazon. Like I wanted there to be an Amazon happening somewhere within that time frame. It would be subdued. It wouldn't be, flying but it would be, you would know, there would be this 7-foot tall, gorgeous woman that would walk in and whoop everyone's ass in some situation. Everyone would be like, where did this person come from? Right. And just sort of tying in some of the elements in the back history. I feel like we did the best we could with the box we were put in against, a revamped entire line of superhero comics where this is the only Western.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of artists that you got to work on the first Jonah Hex series was just like amazing, and like even Darwin Cook came in for an issue too, right? I think I remember.
Yeah, that. He did a couple issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that just something where he just came in and said, "I want to do a couple of these," or you guys reached out to him, or?
Well, we were friends, so we would talk. Yeah. I mean, we were friends, so we would hang out and we would say, will you do one?
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, I'll do one. And I was like, oh, I want to write one for Darwin.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be, and of course he's like, why is it in the snow? Why is there snow? I'm like, it's Canada. That's all it does up there. It's snow.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He was so mad at me. I said, no, I wanted to do like an R-rated version of A Boy's Life magazine from like the 1950s where it was like, let's go on an adventure with Timmy, and Timmy's whole family's murdered by wolves instead of like, how do we start a fire in an igloo?
That's amazing.
So of course, he did that and he did a great job. Obviously everything he touched turned to gold. So then it was like, if there was important stories, there were certain people we knew we wanted to tell those important stories with.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that Hex did 50, which I think you can see that this behind me is one of the pages that he did.
From 50. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was us hanging out. I met Darwin in 2004 at San Diego Comic-Con while he was still working on New Frontier, and he was carrying around a giant stack of pages from that at the convention with him.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's kind of cool too, right? You were kind of molding the story to fit artists too, like Fiona Staples or like you said, Jeff Lemire, someone like that. If you knew they were coming in, you could kind of like tweak the story to be like, this would be cool for them to draw.
Well, we had been talking to Jeff for a while too. Jeff showed a great interest in doing one of the issues. Obviously, when we contact someone like Eduardo Risso, Jordi Brunet, obviously it was just kind of like, we'll just let Jordi do Jordi. We'll let Tony do Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowly became less about, it was like, this person is going to come on the book, so let's give them the story. J.H. Williams did a great story because we knew that J.H. was going to draw things into it that we weren't even thinking about.
Right.
For like sort of teeing up elements for him to be an artist. I mean, that was always the main thing, and that's what I've carried over now that I'm just doing my own thing, is that I want the artist to really enjoy what they're doing and come out and shine, and it just makes everything so much better. It's not a grind. It's not like they're standing there posing a wooden figure going, oh, how do I figure out how to do this fight scene? They want to do it. So that was I don't know that that'll ever be a luxury that people will be able to do at Marvel and DC again. I don't know that they'll just be able to cherry pick the people they want to work with and just let them run with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel really, really lucky to have ever been in that position.
So cool. And I mean, you mentioned your, creator own stuff, stories that you're telling now. So let's jump into those a little bit. Away from the big two, but the first one I want to talk about is Standstill, because that's a horror book, and I'm always big into horror books. Can you give us the rundown on that? What is that book?
It's a combination of a bunch of different things from my own life and personal experiences. Like, I've always had this phobia of being trapped in my body and not being able to do anything, and like you're just basically at the mercy of whatever is around you.
Yep.
And then when I had
terrifying.
Yeah, it's like night terrors or something. Yeah. It's actually terrifying, yeah.
So, and I didn't actually, until back in 2019 when I had heart surgery, I had actually physically experienced that finally outside of my imagination. And it is just as terrifying as I thought it would be, to be completely at the mercy of people,
right,
trapped inside your body.
Yeah.
So the idea was that all of a sudden, most of the population had that problem. They just stopped moving. They were alive, but they couldn't do anything. And they were slowly dying of multiple reasons, whether it was accidents or just starving to death or whatever it was. And then I wanted to do a story about, because the things that we don't see in end of the world stories, the fact that the power, the things that everyone's alive taking care of, when they're not there to do that, you're going to have a mess. And then you have global warming, you have these fires that people are desperately trying to fight in California, and you have these floods in Europe. And with no one around to do anything about those things, it's going to be tough to be survivors. And I thought that was an interesting sort of challenge for myself, to take the modern world and just throw us back into Stone Age with the remnants of the modern world around us, and see, what kinds of people. So I had this character in mind. He was a combat medic and a AMT. And essentially, it's the night before this event happens, he and his fiance get engaged, and he wakes up and he's fine and she's not moving. And so he uses all of his medical skills to keep her alive, but he doesn't really know why and if there's any end game, because there's not enough people left even to make an understanding of what happened. Like, I didn't want to explain all that stuff, because you can usually say alien invasion, viral infection, but I didn't want to spend time doing that as the mystery. I want it to be about people, and then the other stuff will sort itself out. So that's what I started I started writing in 2016. We did one issue in 2017, 2 issues in 2017. And then the artist had some issues going on that were just, there were very important life issues that he had to deal with, and the book got shelved up until last year, when I decided that I was going to ask an artist that I'd just previously worked with on one of the Spicy Pulp books to come in and say, let's do this together and let's see if we can bring this book back to where it was, because I have so much material, and it's worked out. I mean, he's just really taken to the book, and he's very excited every time he gets. I don't let him read any scripts ahead of time, so he finishes one and he gets a new one, so he has no idea. So he'll email me and he'll be like, "Why did you just do this to these characters?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a terrible person." That's
right. That's an interesting way of doing it.
So, yeah, at what point do you start to realize, like, I could do stuff through Kickstarter? Is it through your friendship with Jimmy and what they're doing over there, or was it something before that?
No, with Jimmy, we started doing Kickstarter. He did Queen Crab as his first ever Kickstarter, and then we started doing Kickstarters together. And I don't remember the chronological order of them. I know we did Retrovirus, we did Tattered Man, we did Hype and Abaddon, and Weapon of God and Denver. And I was like, I need to do some things for myself. I need to, it's easy to walk into a room with Jimmy and people go, oh, okay, we know what's going on here. And, there's certain expectation that I wanted to take some time and just feel like I did something on my own. And that's really what I've been doing for the last 6 years. Even though we still work on stuff and, we talk almost weekly. He has his things he's doing, and I have my things I'm doing, and then some things we do together. But that's what I wanted to do. And, it's a learning experience just to start doing Kickstarters that, fortunately I had some experience with them. It wasn't a complete steep learning curve, but that's when I knew I was like, I just want to stand on the merit of the books and not the marketing department and not the character purchase. Mm-hmm. And plus I just needed to do stuff that was creative to me. I felt like I was getting stagnant for a while there. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. In fact, I was making fun of a film recently on social media, and Ted Naif, I think that's how you say his last name. Sorry, Ted. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you're making fun of this. Oh, do you remember doing that yourself?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then he's like, "Oh yeah, we worked on this comic together. You did exactly the same thing." And I was like, "Oh man," I'm like, it hurts, but I'm glad he pointed it out because we deconstructed why that happened. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's easy for that to happen. Right. Because you're hired to do a job and you have the toys to play with, and they say we need X, Y, and Z to happen. Right. And then there's only so many directions you can go in without being able to change things. Right. But of course, you have to shoehorn concepts into concepts just to tell a story that to make it all work in some way.
And do you feel that through those, like, even though you're aware that those things happen in other mediums or even in your own medium and you can see it, sometimes you have to make the mistake yourself to learn?
Oh, yeah. Because sometimes you have a little bit of ego that creeps in there and says, no, I'm going to do it right. And sometimes there's no right way to do the wrong thing. Like, there's no way of fixing it. It just is what it is. And it's a cheap plot ploy, or it's just a crutch or something that you can lean on, which I've been trying to get away from. I've been trying to get away from the idea of looking at comics where I would go through comics and I would get, it's 20 some odd pages, and it would take 15 pages for something to happen. And then that would be the one incident that happened in the comic. And I started looking at things and being like, I want more things to happen in the comic. I want the comics to be bigger. And so all those things have informed, where I've been at lately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So going back to Kickstarter, the main reason you're here is to promote some of the stuff you're doing there. So I know coming up here soon, you're doing a new issue of Spicy Pulp. So what is that series?
That is a throwback comic. It is a love letter to sort of the 1970s, 1980s American and European comics, where they were for adults. They would just do crazy stuff, and there wasn't any sort of restrictions on it with heavy metal and the things that Menard was doing and the Italians were doing, and then the stuff that Mobius was doing, the sci-fi fantasy epic comics, and things like Savage Sword of Conan before. I mean, there's there's a time period of Savage Sword of Conan where all the women are topless, and then there's the Marvel version where all the women have tops drawn back on, and there's just sort of machismo stuff that happens in them that you can't really get away with. And I thought I want to do fun escapist comics. There's no motivation to it. I'm not trying to sell a Netflix show. I'm not trying to stand on the world stage and change everyone's lives or make some kind of political statement. I just wanted you to open up a book, go somewhere else for however long it takes to read the book, and enjoy it. And that's what Spicy Pulp is. It has a main character that's 30 pages of story, and the story is broken into 2 parts. So you have 30 pages of main story, then you have backup short stories, and then the very next issue concludes that first story, and so on and so forth. So a new character is introduced. For instance, the first 2 issues features a character called Lady Redbeard, who starts out as a 17th century pirate fighting with the English and gets lost in the Bermuda Triangle and ends up on a time-traveling, reality-bending trip where she and her crew are just trying to stay alive, and they inherit this, it's a machine god that can function as an engine. So it gets into a 17th century British naval ship and then allows them to travel wherever they want to go or randomly. So they encounter a floating city full of these women who can transform into something else, and they have to figure out a way to escape that. And then they've been running around in space, getting in trouble and pissing off the emperor of known space. So they have to sort of get away from him, and then he has them thrown into prison. So they're in space prison all of a sudden, and there are all these really quirky characters. They'll find an anime robot for no reason other than it just happened to be in a pile of junk on a spaceship somewhere, and that'll become a character in the crew. Lady Redbeard gets thrown into prison, and she's assigned a personal zeitgeist unit, which is meant to rehabilitate her. And it's this annoying little Pixar-type character, and she hates it, and she's like flushing its head in the toilet. She's like, I hate this thing. I'm not going to be, I want to get out of here. Why do you have me in prison? And he's like, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. You got to turn your attitude around. And so she's dealing with this thing, and there's a prison riot, and everyone's trying to kill her, and the Emperor of Space is trying everything he can to get rid of her because there's a plot point in there. And it's just zany fun for the sake of fun, for escapist things that, like when I used to watch Saturday afternoon movies with Sinbad and whatever. I didn't really care. I just wanted him to keep going on adventures. And that's what that book is all about. And there's a second character called the Road Witch, who is based on the idea of whenever you see that there's someone has left a cross and flowers and memorial stuff on the side of the road where someone's perished, the idea was you can go to one of these spots and summon the Road Witch to avenge what has happened to someone.
Oh, that's pretty
she's
awesome.
bound by magic and a curse to go and do that. But she also happens to be a 300-some-odd-year-old lesbian who isn't really happy about sharing her brain with a witch. And so
that's awesome.
It's crazy fun stuff that I just, it's stuff I could never do. Like, if I was constantly pitching things. We were at Terrificon, and somebody asked something at the panel, and I didn't get to elaborate on it. But at one point, Jimmy and I were going to do a Doll Man comic. And my idea was that Doll Man was essentially this really weird character who could possess dolls and toys, and then would use these things to lash out. And I remember Dan DiDio going, no, we cannot have a teddy bear killing a pedophile in the Doll Man comic.
Why not?
Why not? I'm like, I don't want to do a little dude running around like he's powers, he's shrunken, like we have shrunken people, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I was like, what if he did all these crazy things and like you have these toys creeping around and it's a little puppet master, it's a little Chucky, but as a hero. But no, they were like, no, we're not doing that.
Oh man, that would have been cool. I would have read that.
Yeah. You keep saying a key word that has been something I've been harping on for a while now that we don't have enough of. Okay. And that's fun.
Yeah. We don't have enough fun in comics. That's for sure.
I don't know. I mean, I think that comics, a certain demographic of comics, a chunk of them, they shouldn't all be fun, but I mean,
yeah,
right.
I think there's room for everything. But like I was talking about with a friend, where I really miss. I don't know if you read the series or not, but I Hate Fairyland. And when that book came out, there was this period of like books that were just like fun, wacky. They didn't have to be Batman dark, and they didn't have to be this book political statement. They were just fun.
Right.
Weird comics, and like I am in search of that every day since reading that series.
I completely understand. I mean,
And it's
And I
not that
guess-
I don't like those things. I do love
Right.
those books too.
Oh
So-
yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to read the same thing all the time. When the characters, when it doesn't matter what character is in that story, then it's not fun either way. But it's like,
Right.
not every character. I remember at one point before we started doing Power Girl, the thing was that she should be dark and brooding, and she's lost her world, and she's from another universe. And my whole thing was like she's like tall, gorgeous, fit, rich, and smart. I'm like, no one's gonna feel sympathy for her walking around.
Right.
Going, oh man, it sucks.
Oh, poor me. Oh.
Right. So for him, and they reluctantly went with it, and it did really well. And it carried over later into other things that, the like Supergirl show seemed to be a lot of fun when it started. And
Yep. And fun comics that we want to talk about too is something you brought up, Billy the Kit. You gave us the quick little synopsis of that, and I'm excited to read it. So what is Billy the Kit?
I wanted to do another Western, but I didn't want to feel like I was doing Jonah Hex light or my version of Jonah Hex. So I had this idea in my head that I wanted to do like a late night animation with the kind of like, with not exactly the humor of Rick and Morty, but that audience. Except I wanted it to be a gunslinging rabbit, and I wanted him to be cursing all the time. I wanted it to be super violent, and I wanted him to hunt and kill tornado gods. And I couldn't figure out everything with that, but I was like, there's a visual in there. And it started piecing together, and the idea was that his entire family, and I don't mean mom, dad, and a couple siblings, I mean like everyone in his rabbit family wiped out entirely by a tornado god. And he is this he's the smallest rabbit in the whole family. He's sickly all the time. His uncles are like, how is he still alive? And, his dad's a preacher, and he's like, the Lord wants him. I don't know why the Lord won't take him. And he's just, I want to be strong. And they have this whole family gathering, and they won't let him come to the family gathering because he's too sick. So he stays in the ground, and when he wakes up, he suddenly isn't sick anymore, and he's calling out everyone's name. He's like, I feel better. Where is everyone? And he pokes up out of the ground, and it's flat, and everyone's just ripped to pieces, and they're all gone. And so after he buries every single member of his family, he collapses, and he thinks, God, you can take me too. I don't want to be here without you. Like, well, family's gone. Yeah. And he gets woken up by a goat that's kicking him. And he's like, you alive? You alive?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is alive. And it starts to tell the story of how Billy the Kit goes on his adventure of how he's going to eventually hunt down and kill the tornado god that wiped out his family. And along the way, the tornado god is coming back into power. All these creatures, these vampires and werewolves and all these witches and stuff were wiped out during a great war. And there's rabbits who are called sunslingers, which is they can harness the power of Promethean fire in their guns. And so they fought back the evil, and they're almost gone. You want to say like Jedi, but it can be, that kind of mythology. And Billy slowly starts to discover that he might have that ability, but he has no one to train him. And there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of kung fu homages in it.
Sold. Yeah.
So, yeah, and Blue Juice picked it up right in the middle of we did a Kickstarter campaign for all 5 issues, and Barry McLean Jr. is the artist, and Slamet Mugiono is the colorist, and we had been working on this book. We kickstarted issue 1, and people liked it, but it was like, I'm not going to kickstart 22 pages here and there, so we just hunkered down, and we got to work on doing the whole book, at least 5 issues of a mini-series, because it originally started as a pilot. And halfway through the campaign, we got contacted by Blue Juice, and they said, we love this, we want to publish it. Awesome. So we worked out a deal with them, and the first issue is going to be in stores in October. I think you can still pre-order it now. And there's 5 issues, so it's going to run the 5 issues. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I was like, no one's going to ever read this book. I'm like, it's talking animals. It's a gunslinging rabbit. It's a gorgeous looking book, but I was kind of like, it is what it is. It's a talking animal comic. I'm having fun. It's something that I have never been able to do, and no one would, I couldn't sell it to Image or anyone else. No one's going to publish that. Right. But lo and behold, Blue Juice wanted to do it, and they ran with it. And I've got copies of the first first Blue Juice issue.
Oh man,
and everything just came yesterday.
Yeah, that cover art is amazing. You said
the cover's awesome.
I couldn't envision like a gunslinging rabbit, but that thing looks so badass. The cover, that's like
Barry did a great job. There's no two ways about it. It's just it's an oversized issue because it also contains the 8-page trailer that he and I did before we even thought about doing any more books of it, and it's got character designs and stuff in it. So so that's you can see it.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. So let's assume the book surpasses its sale, what you need for sales and everything. It's a success. People love it. Do you have more for this world, or is this kind of just 5 issues and you're out?
No, I mean I didn't think we'd get to this point. So, but there's no. It kind of writes itself. To be honest with you, it's just the sort of thing because I know the end goal is to have the showdown between Billy and the thing that killed his family. But there's also a whole world there. And was using, and the book does run in a sort of a Jonah Hex kind of format where it's 1 and 2 issues. You could just pick up randomly as well as reading it all together as a thing. And I wanted to introduce some other characters and there's other ways to go with it. I see it as something that you can do anything because the nature of it is it's a supernatural Western with talking animals. So you could do things in that book that I've already have tons of notes for that are creatively interesting to write. So it's not something where it would be a drain on, to sit down and go, oh, how am I going to do any more issues of this? It's more like if people really like it, then it's definitely going to be worth doing more of it. And there is more of it to be done. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely can't wait for that. So you said October we can expect prints?
Yeah, it should be in stores in October.
Okay.
Great. I don't know exactly.
And have you nailed down a date for Spicy Pulp issue 6 to hit Kickstarter?
I am hoping to get it in at the end of the month, but it all depends on, because I don't feel morally right about launching this Kickstarter until I know the bulk of Standstill is out there. So I'm still fulfilling Standstill. I put out about 120 books so far, or 120 packages, I should say. It's a lot more books than that because there were 6 issues. But I feel like, if the printer gets me the issues next week, I can probably bang them out really quickly because that'll just be my main focus, is just getting all those books to all the backers and making sure that they're happy. And then I can launch the next Kickstarter, which is this is the trade for the first 2 issues, which features Lady Redbeard. This is a Diego Guerrera artwork, which he did all the artwork on the inside of.
It's amazing.
I gotta be careful where I flip this open because there is a lot of nudity and stuff. But I wanted there's a sea monster in it, and there's zombie dinosaurs, and there's astronauts, and there's this is a R-rated page. And then there's the Road Witch, which she's this is an Ali Garza cover, and then she's this is also an R-rated, mostly for violence and stuff. I mean, there's like there's some naked stuff in it, but that's one of the jokes in Spicy Pulp 5 is that Lady Redbeard is naked for almost the entire thing. And I was like, if Richard Corbin could have Den naked for the whole thing, then we can do some stuff with that. And that's really like what the comics stuff like that, the Richard Corbin and the Druna and the Mobius and I wanted to, again, bring back fun. Just pick up a book and read it for fun. Don't read it because you've been reading it for your whole life and it's a habit. Don't read it because it's a target audience-based book where it has, it doesn't have demographic requirements. It's just fun. It's just read it and then, go on with your day after that. But, hopefully it puts a smile on your face, or you get a chuckle out of it, or, you get grossed out or something. Just some kind of visceral reaction that's better than, like, okay, that's just another chapter and 37 more chapters and I'll have the first complete story of something, So,
And a lot of your stuff's available on Comixology, right? Are these books on Comixology already?
Standstill is on Comixology, and obviously Billy Kit's going to be on there soon.
Right.
And I am looking at doing like a cumulative thing with Spicy Pulp because I have all the different backup stories in there, and I also did I loved Savage Sword of Conan, as we were talking about earlier, but I wanted to do a Savage Sword of Conan, but I didn't want it to be the same thing. So I thought it would be funny if I did. After watching, there's a movie called Demon Slayer. It's an Italian sword and sorcery movie from the 80s. It's horrible.
Yep.
And have you seen it?
No, I've seen clips. I've never watched it.
I watched the whole thing, and I was like, you could never do this now. No one will ever let you make this movie. I'm like,
right.
It's so misogynistic. It's so...
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that would be really funny if like you had a barbarian, and he just didn't get it at all. Like, he was like, I'm entitled to sex because I saved you. So why are you being resistant to this? And having a female character that saved me, like, well, you're gross. Why would I do that? Like, you're not even going to buy me mead. You know, you're a barbarian who doesn't have a horse. Like, where's like what's in it for me? Yeah. And he doesn't understand. So I made it Dude Bro the Barbarian, and he is sort of an amalgamation of
oh my god,
Fred Flintstone, Warlord.
Dude Bro the Barbarian. That's amazing. Oh my, I need to get a poster of him. That's so funny.
So it's just fun. Again, it's fun. It's not it's a rom-com sword and sorcery comic. It runs for 3 episodes and then it's done. And I get to make fun of the difference between wizards and sorcerers and women that have a specific type that they go for that is bad for them, and him not understanding that.
Right. And him just being not aware of any of it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm ripped, I'm beautiful. Yeah. Why do you want this wrinkled old dude in a robe who makes sparks fly out of his hand? I really don't understand what the attraction is.
That's so funny, dude. Oh, man. That's awesome. Yeah.
It makes me think of... it was a recent issue of Savage Avengers where they actually had Conan have a conflict with Black Widow where he's just like hitting on her and she's just like, I have no interest in you, dude. And it was a great back and forth between those two.
Yeah. That's one of the jokes is like, you know, he's like, many women have had sex with me and only some of them I've had to pay, and
that's all. I wanted to pay some of them. That's amazing. Well, awesome, dude. Thanks for sharing all your projects with us, and we're definitely going to share when those books come out. But if our listeners and watchers want to follow you, where can we send them? Where's the best place to send them for you?
It depends. I mean, I'm much less salty in 2021 than I was previously on Facebook, but I don't have a lot of interesting stuff to say on social media because it's like, I don't know. I feel like social media is a positive and a negative, but the negative is more prevalent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
we feel that. Yep.
I don't have the time to argue about things that don't mean anything to me. You know, if it's not making me money, I don't really care what other people are doing. They can have, we can have at it.
Yep.
jvgray.com is the website, and I think I've got an Instagram on there. But again, unless you want to look at pictures of my cats, I don't know but that's the social media outlet. I'm kind of on Twitter, but not really. But I don't know.
And you have your own website too?
Yeah, that's jvgray.com.
Oh, JV Gray. Sorry. Yep.
That's all right.
So everybody out there, I'll have the links to that below, the JV Gray website, as well as Justin's Comixology page. And I'll even throw in a link to the Previews World Billy the Kit so that you can order it straight from the website to your local comic shop. And
there's also there's a landing page where you can sign up to be notified for the Spicy Pulp 6 Kickstarter. And that's going to have all the issues that are going to be available, whether it's the 2 trades that collect the first 2 issues and then the separate issues of 5 and 6. And these are 60 to 64 page comics. They're not like a 22 page comic. So they're big, healthy sized comics.
Yeah, shoot that my way too. I'll add that into the show notes as well so people can just click on it and check it out.
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah, Justin, thanks so much for being on, man. Hopefully we'll do it again soon one day and talk a little bit more about some, because we didn't even mention Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters.
Yeah.
And one day we're going to sit down and talk about Uncle Sam.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about Freedom Fighters for sure.
All right, yeah. There's something in there I'm sure somebody will find offensive.
Yeah. Awesome.